Good evening, everybody. Here I am just about unprepared. That's what happens when you have some extra time to prepare. You take more time than you need. And I was peaking at 10 o'clock. I was peaking, Dr. Demento. And here we are. I have, let me see here. Where is it? Yes, here it is. First of all, before we even start, where is Sulu? Send Sulu in here. I have a letter here that I want to read. It's about Sulu. And this is one of those... Pull up a chair, Sulu.
Okay.
Pull up. Were you performing that live?
Yeah.
That was very good.
One of them.
That was real good. Let's see. You can sit down here. We'll pull up the microphone, get nice and cozy here. Were you on another radio station recently?
Yes. It must have been about a month ago. It was right across the street, as a matter of fact. KMPC.
Okay. Here, I got a letter about it.
Okay.
I'm going to read it to you. And,
is it good or bad?
Well, we'll find out.
Okay.
You can see by the handwriting, it's very hard to read anyway. Okay. Dear Mike, my friends and I are writing to you in regard to a situation that deals with freedom of speech, etc., as stated in the Constitution. I bet you didn't think, Sulu, that you were going to get involved in a constitutional controversy. Okay. We are avid listeners of your show, KMET, and the Dr. Demento Show. My parents were listening to KMPC a few weeks ago and called us into the room when they found out that Sulu from the Dr. Demento Show was one of the guests on talk radio on KMPC. We all love Sulu and think that she's both talented and cute, as we've seen her in person at many live Dr. D shows. You are cute. I've never been this close to you. Well, to get to the point, people were asked to call in and respond to Sulu's songs. The response was pretty good, with the exception of two bitches who thought that Sulu's songs, which she performed live, were too risque for their children, and that kind of material was not appropriate for an afternoon show. We were really... I can't say that word.
The first, I know what that is.
Blanked off. We feel that Sulu's songs are not outrageous, but rather healthy, clever, and in good taste. How dare these women make assumptions that kids shouldn't hear this stuff? We're kids. Somewhat. So it says somewhat. I'm 17. My friends are 14, 15, and 16. Sulu brings out a lot of our fantasies, our deep desires, and sings about subjects that concern us all. Locked in the Closet talks about feelings that guys all have for chicks, and vice versa. Plus, Sulu has the perfect right to state her feelings. We've learned that in U.S. government class in our school. I am pretty upset that people like that don't treat us kids like anyone else. We're not stupid. We're not unaware of what's going on in the world. In fact, we're a lot smarter and, in fact, more aware than anyone gives us credit for. It's these kind of conservative people who will be the ones who are going to have the most problems communicating with their kids because they are unaware of how much kids already know. Don't try to shelter us, but treat us like adults. And as for Sulu, she's great. The songs she does are really far out. What I mean is I really can identify with a lot of her feelings. You're getting through, Sulu.
Yeah.
My friends, she's crying, folks. This is getting to her. She's a sensitive young lady. My friends and I are going to continue to sing Locked in the Closet and Small Busted Women for a long time. I only wish that more people had a broader mind and would realize that kids are a lot more aware, mature, and knowledgeable about life and society than most people think. I'm writing you this because I had to get it off my chest. My friends share my feelings. I needed some time to get my thoughts together. I tried to call you time after time, but found it impossible to get through. I do hope you'll read this on the air at night, for I know there are a lot of kids who feel the same. Thanks, Mike. KMET rocks all LA. Tell Sulu we dig her, and she's doing a great job. Tell Dr. Demento he's got the best show. Tell yourself you're bitchin'. Signed, Jeff Riley.
Oh,
all right, what do you think of that?
That is so great. You know, I was really upset. I shared this with a few people at the station a few weeks ago. I did have this interview on KMPC, and I decided to start the show off with some songs that were humorous, and I decided not to start with anything serious, but of course two people opposed this because they said immediately that their little kids were listening, or there are other children out there that would oppose this and they should never hear this. But when I'm writing about it are things that all people think about, which are very natural human emotions. And I did get some calls like a few weeks ago, and people were upset about it. And it was really nice, but I was wondering what other people were thinking also. Well, what really did upset me is that DJ did get fired for having me on the show.
He did?
Yeah, but
he
did, but it wasn't the only reason, I guess.
Well, whatever. Whatever.
But
okay. All right,
but,
Sulu. Well, listen, I'm glad that, I got to read this to you and surprise you
nice
with it. I figured you'd like to hear that.
It's nice to know people support you out there. And
well, you're becoming a folk hero of sorts, a controversial folk hero.
Yeah.
And, we're behind you.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Okay.
And all of you out there who support Dr. Domeno and everybody who is into dementia, and I really appreciate it. I'm about to cry. Okay, bye.
Bye.
It's really emotional.
She means it. Okay, thank you. And away she goes. See you next week. Bye-bye. Okay, boy, I thought she was kidding at first. The letter made her cry. Okay, hi, I'm Mike Harrison, 94.7 KMET. The program is Mike Harrison's Public Access Part 2, a live presentation of KMET designed to give you, the listeners of KMET, the opportunity to either get on the radio and express yourself on whatever it is that's on your mind, or just settle back in the eavesdropper's gallery and check out the views and perceptions that are flying about Southern California. See what your friends and neighbors think about everything from problems of the lovelorn to quests to unlock the secrets of the universe. The program is solely comprised of individual opinions, and none of which are meant to represent KMET editorial policy or the opinions of Metro Media or the staff, management, or sponsors of KMET or Metro Media Incorporated. And some of the information that you may hear on the program may indeed be untrue. Linda Clark is our producer on the front line tonight, taking the calls and sorting them out, funneling them through. Chris Applegate, our technical wizard. The telephone numbers are as follows. In the 213 area code, it's 520-KMET. In the 714 area code, 523-KMET. In the 714 area code, 523-KMET. Without further delay, let's get rolling.
Little bit of heaven, 94.7 KMET. Tweedledee.
All right, line T, you're on the radio.
Mike.
Yeah.
This is Matt. How you doing?
Hi, Matt. What's on your mind?
I just want to talk to you about violence in the world today and how people should treat people as they would want themselves to be treated.
The Golden Rule.
Golden Rule, absolutely.
Which is a wonderful rule indeed, if only we all followed it. Most of the topics we talk about in this program would evaporate into obsolescence.
Yeah, that's true. In the past weeks, I've heard various people call in and complain about, well, gee, we nearly got in a fight with these group of Hispanics or this group of blacks, and we're afraid to go to the beach because this might happen or that might happen. And I figured that if they just kind of realized that everybody was out for the same thing, which is basically a better life for themselves, and went along with the Golden Rule, as you said before, and helped each other out generally. Like if they see a crime committed, it's their civic duty to report it, or if not to intervene, to at least try and break it up somehow.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ridiculous how people are getting beat up on the street these days, and other people are standing by and watching.
It's incongruous. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And when you think about it, I don't know, you might have seen something, a lot of listeners out there have probably seen something like this happen, possibly, turn their backs on it. And it's a crime. Doing that is committing a crime in itself. It really is.
Oh.
And as for the misconceptions everybody has about the different ethnic groups being separated the way they are and all, it's a fallacy. Like I say, everybody wants the same thing. Everybody should help each other out.
Well, you've certainly shared some words of wisdom, and I'm glad that you did. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Lots of good points.
Mark?
Yeah?
Also want to congratulate you on your son.
Thank you.
And I realize that he has the same name I do.
Yes. I thought of that when you said your name.
All right, well, thank you very much, and you have a good evening, okay?
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye. Okay. Got a little note here. Dear Mike, I'm a devout listener of Public Access as well as The Breakfast Show. I myself am interested in the radio business. In fact, one day I hope to get a da-da-da-da-da-da. It seems that every week you mention that you get so many letters that it is becoming a separate aspect of the show. Here is my idea. Why don't you set aside a time, maybe Sunday mornings, to read letters and comment on them? And let me know what you think. Read this letter if you want on the air. That's from Bob Carlson in Rolling Hills. Well, we did it this morning. We did. You may have heard. Instead of rebroadcasting a Saturday morning show, we did a mailbag program, and it was quite interesting. And if you have any comments you'd like for us to know about, or perhaps read on the air, either Saturday morning or Sunday night, or if we ever do another mailbag program on Sunday morning, send us a note to Mike Harrison, KMET, 5746 Sunset Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90028. Keep it as brief as possible and try to write legibly. Type it if you can. And we cannot guarantee that we'll read it on the air, nor can we guarantee that we'll respond to you. But we do guarantee at least that we'll read it and know where you're at. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Line M, you're on KMET.
Is that M?
Yep.
Okay.
That's you.
Hi. I wanted to talk about this guy who committed suicide earlier this week in Brentwood.
Mm-hmm.
He was my cousin, and there's a couple things I wanted to say about it. First of all, in the first article that came out in the newspaper, the press, or what they printed was that the detective said that he was very weird and very spaced out, which a detective sees that kind of thing all the time, and I guess they deal with it in a, it's cold to them. They see it all the time. But when a newspaper, when they print something, they have a responsibility to know about what they're printing.
Mm-hmm.
And it did appear very spaced out, but when you're dealing with suicide, you know that a person is also very tormented if he's going to take his own life. And that hurt their family a lot when they wrote that in there. And they called up the Times and they talked to the reporter that wrote it and, told them how upset they were with her for doing it. And the Times was very good about it and retracted it. Or not that they retracted it, but they printed another story about it, which was cool, but the damage had already been done. And the other thing I wanted to say was that he was into PCP. And I don't know when exactly he started doing it, but I know it's been at least a year and a half because his parents were trying to, they took him to a rehabilitation center and doing everything they could possibly do for him to help him clean himself up and get rid of it. And whatever problems he may have had, and whatever other drugs he used, I think PCP is what killed him, and I think people should know what a dangerous drug it is.
All right. Well, you covered two very important topics tonight. And it's very true that, freedom of the press is one of the freedoms that we must work to preserve and guarantee. But as part of the responsibility of having that freedom, journalists should exercise as much caution and discretion as possible so as not to hurt people's reputations, lives, or print anything that is peripheral to the important information that could be damaging or taint the color of the story.
Yeah.
It's something that happens often. And as far as PCP is concerned, that speaks for itself. Thank you so much for the call.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Line E, you're on KMET. Line E, are you there? I thought we had somebody on line E. I guess not. Line K, are you there?
Yes.
Well, what's on your mind?
Well, I'd like to talk about different minorities.
Yeah?
Well, throughout the history of the United States, different minorities have been made into somewhat of a subhuman race.
Actually, you know something? The United States Constitution is designed primarily to protect the rights of the smallest minority.
Yeah, but...
And you know who that is?
Who?
The individual.
Yeah, that's true.
Go ahead now.
Yeah, but it's not the government that makes minorities, it's people, really. Like, dominant race in the United States is the Anglo-Saxon, right?
The Anglo-Saxon?
The white?
The Caucasian race.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the United States is divided into the Mexican people and the Asians. It was all written down on the census.
Yeah.
And there's only really 3 races in the world: Caucasian, the Mongols, and the Negroid, right?
Not really.
Yeah.
That's only one way of looking at it. You can also point to other groups of people as races unto themselves. The whole subject of race is not cut and dry. And biologically, it's not as important a categorical concept as other things that people don't pay attention to. It's just like we decided to pick the color of the skin and the shape of certain features to mean something, but it's really part of a deep-seated psychological need we have to group people together and judge them as a group to the detriment of the rights of each individual within the group. And if it weren't for color, it would probably be height, or it could be economic class, or it could be the size of feet. It's not that people think somebody of a different color is, carries disease or something like that. It's very psychological, and the roots of it go beyond just the obvious differences on a superficial level that racial differences carry.
Yeah, and there's one other minority that hardly people ever talk about.
What's that?
Children.
That's some. You see, every group is a minority. How do you want to look at it? You think children are getting a raw deal? Do you think that they don't have the rights they should within our society?
Yeah, like I got one example. I don't know if there's any others, but one example that I'm talking about is when you go to a theater, have to be 16 and over to see certain movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
that's supposedly...
if you're 12 and over, you have to pay those prices. It's unfair.
Okay. Thank you for your opinion.
Okay, and by the way, I had a lot of trouble getting on the phone. I became sort of an expert dialing with my toes, since the phone is at my feet.
You dial with your toes?
Yeah.
And you find that you have a better chance of getting through?
Well, I got in about 10 dialings. That's just
that's a
helpful hint for your callers.
I never thought of that. That's great. Even if they dial with their toes, maybe after 10 times they just might get across, huh?
Yeah, get the walking back on your feet.
Okay.
Kind of hard walking on your fingers. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. It's called towing the line, huh? Forgive me for that one. Bye-bye. On this subject of racism, which we've been talking about, I have a letter here from an intellectual snob. And I use that term, Annette, who wrote the letter, as objectively as I can. Because let's just see what you say here. Dear Mike, I feel intellectually degraded. Why? The reason lies in your astute radio audience who listen to your program. To call your radio audience astute, which I do often, is using improper terminology. It would be far more appropriate to call your audience ignorant, arrogant, and dogmatic. Granted, there are a few individuals to be intelligent in nature. The majority, however, are not very knowledgeable. If your audience used factual evidence to support their opinions or observations, I could be made to respect their line of reasoning. What you're hearing there, folks, is somebody generalizing about an audience as though each and every one of you knew each and every other one of you and had something in common, like a card-carrying club member or something, other than the fact that you're both part of the same audience of separate individuals, all listening and participating in the same program alone together. Back to the letter. But to make an observation based solely on sensory experience negates everything that I have worked so very hard for in my education. From listening to your show, I realize that I am very fortunate in that I have had university training at UC Berkeley and that I have ascertained an anthropological historical degree. I now know that I could never get a better education elsewhere. Talk about dogmatic. I must say I really pity those who will forever remain in their limited perceptual world. And tell me, Annette, is your world now perceptually unlimited? Now, let's go on with this. However, I have deterred myself from what I really wanted to say. While I was listening to your Sunday night program on March 1st, 3 individuals brought up the subject of the Ku Klux Klan. I feel that their prejudices clearly marred the subject not of the KKK, but of the subject of human variation. That is what prompted my angry letter. So I'm going to make an attempt to define human variation in an anthropological, biological perspective. Let me start by defining the term racism. Racism is the belief that cultural and social differences between people are due to hereditary differences. And she got that from Stein and Rowe, page 111. These differences are often seen as an inherent superiority of one group over another. A group, i.e., Hitler attempts at genocide of the Jews, that considers itself superior, eliminates or tries to eliminate another group. Racism is a perfect example of the application of eugenics. That's the study of the various methods which can improve the inherited qualities of a species. People who take it upon themselves to decide a particular group is inferior or undesirable in the guise of improvement practice negative eugenics against a particular ethnic group. And that's from Stein and Rowe on page 111 also. There is no evidence, I repeat, there is no evidence that any group is superior or inferior to another. All human groups have a common ancestry and a common gene pool. The physical differences between people are the result of superficial adaptations to particular environments or the result of drift. A race, then, can be defined as a group of individuals whose corporate gene content called the gene pool differs from that of other groups. Why, then, is there so much variation within a single species? What are the causes? Mutation, natural selection, or differential fertility? Founder's principle, non-random mating, and geographical or cultural isolation are the causes of variation within human populations. Mutation can be considered the ultimate source of variation. Mutation provides for the introduction of new alleles. An allele is an alternate form of a gene, which combine with existing alleles into unique combinations. Natural selection is a powerful force in creating differences in allele frequencies. One trait may be beneficial, this goes on and on. Well, actually it doesn't, we're almost done. In one area, but disadvantageous in another. Founder's principle states that small groups of individuals migrate to new territories. This principle accounts for much variability. Natural disasters, as well as man-made, can create new populations. Group differences are also due to the fact that people have a tendency to mate within their own local group, known as inbreeding. And when inbreeding broke down, people began mating with other groups. Movements of human populations meant gene flow. These groups are not static, but constantly fluctuating. Then differences in skin color of human populations can be attributed to two substances that are both responsible for producing different colorations, and they are melanin and keratin. Both are produced in the outermost portion of the skin. Light skin is due to a low density of melanin and keratin. Dark skin is due to high concentrations of melanin and keratin. Dark skin is due to high concentrations of melanin, and yellow-tinged skin is due to high keratin concentrations. Differing concentrations of melanin and keratin produce various brownish colorations. Before mass population movements, dark skin coloration was found near the equator. Then as populations moved away from the equator, skin coloration became lighter. Why is dark skin found at the equator? There are two theories. First, dark skin provides protection from radiation and the sun. The second theory revolves around the synthesis of vitamin D. Vitamin D is vital for calcium absorption, and calcium is necessary for normal bone development. Too little of vitamin D leads to rickets. Too much can be fatal. Most vitamin D is manufactured in the body. Melanin exerts a regulatory force on vitamin D production by controlling the amount of ultraviolet radiation reaching those layers of skin where vitamin D synthesis takes place. The higher the melanin content, the greater the protection from ultraviolet radiation. Cultural factors also can affect skin coloration. Suntan lotion, also people who sunbathe will be darker than those who protect themselves from tanning. Thanks to the study of human variation, biased value judgments and superficial classifications of man based on outward characteristics have been discredited and deemed unacceptable in studying man from an anthropological biological perspective. I have tried to keep my discussion on human variation on an elementary level. Let me hope that I have enlightened your audience and the three individuals mainly who I accuse of grossly generalizing. If a faulty premise is made, then a faulty conclusion will result. We as a species try to classify objects. We put them into nice, neat packages, but we all share a number of characteristics as well as a number of traits. A common cultural heritage is shared by all. We all inherit a set of genetic characteristics from our parents, i.e. learning experiences, culture, which they have been exposed to. I would not be surprised if everyone's lineage contained a portion of every ethnic culture known. Thank you, Mike, for letting me state a factual opinion. Sincerely, Annette. And a lot of her information came from the book Physical Anthropology, published by McGraw-Hill in New York, 1974, by Philip Stein and Bruce Rowe. Well, Annette, you have dogmatically really stated something that is both interesting and applicable to this topic. And I thank you for your opinion, but I wish that you were a little bit more tolerant of other people's methods of feeling. Because thinking and feeling both are part of perceiving, and you think that the level of expression equals the level of feeling. And that is a major mistake, often made by people who think that being intelligent or intelligible makes the viewpoint of the expressor more valid and real than that of one who requires a bit of extra comprehension on the part of the listener to understand. Line M, you're on KMET.
Good evening, Mike. This is Steve from Long Beach.
Hi, Steve. What's on your mind?
It's quite a letter. Very informative. I wanted to talk a little bit about political activism.
Mm-hmm.
Something that was popular not too awfully long ago in the past decade of the 60s that is being highly revered these days and touted about as a time of enlightenment and political involvement. And I wanted to point, I'd like to make the statement right off that I'm basically, politically speaking, a liberal-leaning person, and that there are a lot of things that I would like to just loosely lump into, I would call conservatism that's going on, that upsets me, reading the Times and listening to the news, things that are going on in the country politically. Some of the people who've been elected, that their viewpoints differ from mine radically. And the simple fact of the matter is that those people are there strictly because a number of people got together and voted for them. And
yeah, but you have to take into account that a number of people who voted for them have different interests than you do, and thus different political perspectives.
That's true. I understand that.
Unless you believe in only one dogmatic ideology, as opposed to practical pragmatism, which really has been the motivating force behind American politics for as long as I can remember. I think since Roosevelt.
Well, I think I was wanting to lump, I put myself in a liberal category as opposed to a conservative.
But isn't that really relative term? Aren't they relative terms?
Just for the purpose of discussion or whatever, kind of polarizing identity there, whatever. The point that I wanted to make is that things could be changed from the course that they're taking now. Pendulum the other way, just as by people getting together and voting, that finding out what's going on and learning about some of the groups that are...
That's based on the assumption, though, that the people who are not voting share your political view.
Well, that's true.
In other words, what you're basically stating, if I'm listening to you properly, is that the reason the country has taken a so-called turn to the right is because most of the people who would want it to take a turn to the left or remain on a leftward course didn't vote.
Well, that's true. I guess I had made that assumption. I know I'm certainly a lot less involved than I was, say, 10 years ago in what's going on.
Have you ever thought that a lot of the people, though, who voted for the turn to the right were the same people who were involved with the turn to the left back in the 60s? And that again...
Yes, I hadn't really thought about that as seriously as I had thought of the other that you'd pointed out to me, that I was assuming that people who were thinking like myself had just been sitting on the sidelines watching all this take place rather than being involved. That's a really good point.
Well, think about it. But thank you for your point, and it was nice...
Could I make one... well, actually, there were two more quick ones.
Real quick, okay?
There does seem to be a certain level of activism re-emerging, and something that I'd like to say is that I think it would be real important, that I know it's real important for people who are getting involved in different things to keep a basic premise in mind, and that is non-violence. And whatever kind of political activism they may be getting involved in, non-violence as a precept, as a goal, as a method, I think is very important to keep in mind. Hostility is something that's been a subject that's been broached on your program a number of times lately, and I think that level, it feels a lot higher to me than it did back when, and maybe I'm wrong there, but I think nonviolence is a real key thing to keep in mind.
I can't argue with that.
The one last thing is KMET programming off limits for discussion on this show?
Not really, but I choose not to use it for that because then it becomes only that, and it will run the gamut from you're the greatest radio station in the world to you don't play enough Led Zeppelin or you play too much Led Zeppelin.
Criticism that I would like to voice if that would be okay.
And
short and
well, let me point out one other thing, and one of the other reasons that we don't dabble on that is because there are topics in the world that are far more important than whether or not this radio station is programmed well or not, whether or not it's programmed well. Okay. And it would change the whole nature of the program to have it be a, complaint about the station time. All complaints are welcome and are to be addressed to the program director of the radio station. Forums that spend too much time talking about themselves tend to become self-servient, and although some people may think it is a cop-out to avoid discussing criticism of the program and of the station on the program, it is in fact a public service not to, because it in turn usually turns out to be a hype for the forum and for the station. But go ahead, since you brought it up. Okay. Tell us your criticism, and I will thank you for it no matter how harsh it is, and then we'll move on.
Okay, I don't think it's too harsh. I feel a certain air of glamour attached to drug use by a number of your disc jockeys, who I really enjoy your disc jockeys and the shows that they present. But it just seems like there's a certain amount, it feels to me like there's a certain amount of irresponsibility involved when smoking socks and partying hardy is like a real major thrust of a lot of the kibitzing and whatnot that goes on, and especially with so many teenage alcoholics and just young people who are getting not just recreationally involved with drugs, but like really involved with drugs. Maybe not getting strung out or addicted, but just at the very least wasting a bunch of years when they could be accomplishing something for themselves rather than kicking back and partying all the time. And that was it. I just wanted to say that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And I would appreciate if you would also take the time to write it down and send it, as I had mentioned,
I'll do that.
Into the station, okay?
I will do that. I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Line E, you're on KMET.
Hi, Mike.
Hello.
I want to talk about the judicial system.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say that I don't think they should spend all that money on getting new cops. I think they should build new jails, because we're arresting enough people. They're just not going to jail. We're just recycling them.
Well, what you're saying then is we should have more convictions.
Yeah.
You're not saying we should have more jails. We should have more convictions, which then would result perhaps in the need for more jails. But I've never heard of a judge not sending somebody up the river because there was no place up the river.
Yeah, but there are too many people in jails right now. We need to get more. Right?
Need to get more room in jails so that they could bring in even more folks, huh? How old are you?
15.
Okay, well, thank you for your view.
Thank you. KMET rocks Pasadena.
Yes, it does.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Line T, you're on KMET.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The topic that I have is getting involved.
Getting involved with what?
Right. Well,
Wait, you didn't answer. Getting involved with what?
with something that happened to me yesterday on the freeway.
Okay, I see what you mean. Go ahead.
Okay. I was coming home on the Santa Ana Freeway west towards Los Angeles in Orange, and not really paying attention to anybody around me, you know. And I looked to the side of me, and there was a kid driving a car by himself, about 10 years old.
Oh, my.
You know, it was amazing. So as he passed me, I couldn't believe it.
Are you sure it was a
Mouth
kid?
wide open.
You're sure it was a kid, not just a very young-looking?
Positive, because I'll tell you what happened.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, he passed by me, you know, and I just stayed back because I figured if he noticed that I knew that he was only about 10 years old, because he was looking through the steering. It was a kid. You could tell it was a kid.
And there was no one else in the car?
Nobody else.
Was he smoking a cigar?
He should have been.
Go on.
Anyway, he took off in front of me, and I just stayed back and watched him for a while. But I was amazed that nobody else around me, you know, was doing anything. They weren't watching the car. Nobody else noticed him. He was going through traffic, and he got up to a point where there was cars all the way across, and he couldn't go any further. At that point, I was catching up to him, you know. And, I mean, what do you say to a kid that's driving a car by himself? Pull over, please, you know.
Mm.
So I followed him for about 10, maybe 15 miles. We came up to the Newport Riverside Freeway,
Mm-hmm.
and he got off the 5 freeway, and there's like an S on-ramp onto the Newport Riverside. So he went up on one side and missed the railing all the way around on both of the turns by about maybe 2 inches. You know, at this point, I was just freaking. I didn't know what to do. So I just stayed behind him and cut off a couple of cars so they wouldn't get around him, you know, not to where they had to slam on their brakes or anything. But anyway, there was a highway patrol coming up behind us, and I waved him over to me and yelled to him that there was a 10-year-old kid driving the car. And he pulled him over, and the kid by that time was in the fast lane doing about 55, 60, you know. He used his turn signals. He knew what he was doing. It's just that, it was amazing. But people anymore, they just don't pay any attention to what's going on around them. They're so into where they're going all the time. It seems that way.
That's one of the
They're not
greatest.
really trying to.
That's one of the greatest causes of accidents on the freeway.
Exactly.
People don't understand.
That was scary.
They don't really fully comprehend the physics of what's happening around them. They do lull themselves into a delusion of solitude.
Exactly right.
What you should have done is not have followed the kid or tried to pull him over or anything like that.
Oh, no, he didn't know. I wasn't following that close.
Okay.
No, I made sure that he wouldn't panic, because, I mean, that was the first thing I would have thought he would have done.
The thing to have done would have been to pull over, to get his license number and a description of the car, pull over at one of the call boxes.
I did have his license plate number, and I was going to do that.
Yeah.
But I just
Then you
I
saw the
couldn't leave
highway.
him
Oh,
by
I see.
himself, just going. I felt.
But that's the point. You couldn't do anything, though. You see, anything.
I know.
Again, the physics involved were such that if he were incompetent, you could have caused more trouble trying to communicate with him from one vehicle to another moving on the freeway.
Can you just imagine that? Pull over.
Yeah, I mean, there was really little you can do other than, see, what I think you should have done was pull over, get the make of the car, get the whole thing,
Right.
pull over immediately, jump on the box, the highway patrol would intercept him up in ratio to how much time had gone by since he passed you. They have it covered that way.
Well,
And,
if it ever happens again, which I doubt, you know, that's exactly what I'll do, but...
Oh, yeah, I mean, just
Yeah.
it's easy for me to say that sitting here in the comfort of this living room, you know, and not being out there in the situation when it happens.
Well, I was amazed that I didn't hear anything about it on the radio. I mean, something that bizarre. It seems as though they would have it on the radio or in the newspaper or something, and I haven't read anything about it. Or...
You only hear about a fraction of the bizarre happenings in not only our community, but the nation and the world on the radio or in the newspapers.
Well, that's true.
Just a fraction. Thanks for the call.
Oh, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Line K, you're on KMET. Line K?
Hello?
Hi. We have a very staticky line.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Well, what's on your mind? We're going to have to make it quick because the line is staticky.
Hello?
I'm sorry. Line M, you're on KMET.
Hi.
Hi.
What I wanted to talk about was the person who wrote the letter you just finished reading a while ago.
About races?
Yeah, okay. She seems to know her stuff intellectually.
Well, she wrote out of a book. She gave the book, and she told us what a textbook says.
What I want to disagree with is she came across saying that the three that she was harpooning in general, that they were arrogant, among other things. And it seems to me that anybody who comes down like that on somebody else, for whatever reason,
is pretty arrogant themselves.
Pretty arrogant themselves.
Well, that's what I had said. She's as dogmatic about her her facts as she was claiming other people are about their opinions.
She sounds like she's the type who, just follow what everybody says to do, and you won't get in trouble, and you don't get anybody mad at you. So
people who proselytize theories and facts that they picked up in magazine articles and books. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
Although what she did write may very well be true.
Oh, yeah, I agree with what she was writing.
It was her attitude about it that was repugnant.
Yeah. I mean, often calling everybody arrogant and whatever. Also, one other minor point on semantics I wanted to talk about was listening to Dr. Demento before you. He said something about getting a button proclaiming you to be a member of the immoral minority. And semantically, I think it would be better to say you are a member of the amoral minority.
Well, there's a difference between immorality and amorality.
Yeah, and I think that amorality, at least in my opinion, is better, being that immoral seems to me saying you have a set idea, or at least you are going against other people's morals, whereas amoral, you basically have no morals.
Okay.
That's my drift.
Send the buttons back. I get your drift. Thank you for the call.
Thank you.
Line E, you're on KMET.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, my name is Andy, Canoga Park.
Yeah?
And I'd like to complain about a letter that you got sent a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
About somebody who wrote and said everybody who listens is a pothead.
Yeah.
You remember that letter?
Of course.
Well,
I should have said to you, no, I can't remember it. No, I remember it.
Well, see, I felt really offended about that because I listen to the radio like 17 hours a day at least, and it's mostly on KMET, and he's offending a lot of people around him, and he is also offending the radio station and you and your show.
Well, that's okay.
And he's a pothead.
So you take offense.
Yeah.
All right. We got a lot of mail in reaction to that. Lots of folks agree with you.
Yeah.
All right. You feel better?
Yeah.
Great.
Also, I'd like to say KMET rocks Canoga Park.
That it does. You have a nice night now, okay?
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. And we'll have more in a moment.
When you're looking for cooking, the star isn't far. Carl's Jr. Get a lot of great taste. Put yourself in our place. Carl's Jr.
Next time you feel like cooking up a great tasting breakfast, take a tip from Carl's Jr. Don't. We've already done it for you. You want hotcakes and sausage? You got it. Steak and eggs.